When scanning in photographs, we don't actually open the picture, we import or acquire. So we go to File menu and we'll select Import, and from our drop down list we select the scanner that's been installed. And now we're going to be prompted to create a new preview. So we click on the preview button, and now the entire scanner surface is brought in as a single image. Looking at the scanner settings dialog panel, we can select the document type, which is at the moment is set to reflective, and that's any printed material that's actually laid on the scanner surface. The other option is for film with film holder. If you've got a transparency adapter, then your scanner will probably have supplied you with film holders that you can place mounted transparencies in there, or roll film, media, etc. And then there's also a film with film area guide, and this is just a mask that lays on top of the scanner surface, and you can actually lay film flat on the scanner surface. The next one is the document source, and this is the document table. If you've got a multi-document feeder attached, then you would have this option, but at the moment there's only the one option, the document table. The auto exposure type is set for photo, or we could have it set for document. We'll stay with photo. Moving down to the destination section, we've got image type, and this defines the quality of your scan. And from the drop down list we can see that at the top is 48-bit color. Now if you're film scanning, 48-bit color will actually capture the most image information, especially in transparency material. But for print scanning, 24-bit color is more than sufficient. Color smoothing, this will take out any banding or noise granularity in a color picture. 16-bit grayscale, this is the equivalent of 48-bit color but in grayscale. But for most black and white print scanning, 8-bit grayscale will be more than sufficient. If we click on the 8-bit grayscale, we can see that entire preview area has now turned to a monochrome scale. The last option is black and white. Now this has converted the entire scanner area into pure black and white, and you'd use this for text scanning or line art. You do have a few other options, black and white options here, where we can actually filter out the various channels. So we can drop out the red channel and we go back into 24-bit color. The scanning quality, you can either have best or draft, and draft will give you a quick scan, but best will obviously give you the best quality. Resolution. Now resolution is the one area that most people get confused by. Depending on your own scanner specifications, the resolution will vary between 50 dpi right through to 12,800 dpi. But be aware that some of the very high settings are interpolated resolutions. These are not true optical resolutions. On this Epson scanner, the actual optical resolution is at 6,400, but for generally speaking for film scanning I would use 3,200. For print scanning, we could use settings between 240 and 360. Going above this would serve no practical purpose unless you were just scanning in a small section of a print. But I'm going to actually set this to 300 dpi. The next part is the document size. Now the document size is actually defined by the selection you make within the scanning area. So if we drag out a selection area here, we can now see that the document size, I'll put this into inches for easiness, we can see now the select document size is 4.32 inches by 6.7, and if I alter the selection area we can see that these figures also alter. Now when you are making a selection for scanning a print, then be generous with the amount that you leave, border you leave on there, because you can actually make a far more accurate crop in your image editing application. The target size, at the moment it's set up as the original, so if we go into inches there we can see that our target size matches our document size. But if I wanted to make it slightly different, I could actually choose any one of these settings here. So if I wanted to get to 5:7, you'll notice now that the selection area is just actually reduced in size proportionally to match a 5:7 output. This is ideal if you've got an existing photo frame and you want to scan a picture in to match the photo frame. There is another way to do this in your image editing application, and I will explain that later on. But for the time being, I'm just going to set it to the original, so we'll do a 1:1 scan there. And the scale we've set at 100%. If we set this to 200%, it would obviously make your target size twice as big. Moving down onto the adjustment section, from here you can actually apply considerable amount of color correction to your scans before bringing them into your image editing application. My own preference is to actually bring in as much raw information as possible and do all the color correction in the image editing application. But we'll just have a quick brief overview. There's an automatic auto exposure. Just click on this and you'll see the image is automatically adjusted for both highlight and shadow detail. You can reset this again if you're not happy with it. It's always worth clicking on it to see if it will improve your picture automatically. Then other settings are the levels settings. Other settings can be obtained from the top here: curves or saturation, contrast, brightness, and the color balance. The unsharp mask filter on this particular one and on most scanners, you have fairly basic settings: low, medium and high. Again, I prefer to use the unsharp mask filter in my image editing application. The descreening filter, this is quite useful. Click on this, and if you're scanning in newspaper, magazines or fine art prints, then you can choose what screening factor you can apply, and this will remove any moire, i.e. the print dot. Color restoration, this will attempt to resaturate photographs for you. Again, we can do this in our image editing application. The next item deals with dust removal, and this is digital ice technology. This is a hardware based system, and your scanner needs to be compatible with the digital ice technology. Basically, it will remove all the dust that's on any film surface, and on this particular scanner it will also remove dust on the top of prints. I will deal with this in more detail in the film scanning section. So let's take a look at some of the tools we'll be using for our tutorials. The first one is the marquee or selection tool. You have various options here. We can either use the rectangular marquee tool or the elliptical marquee tool. I'm actually going to use the rectangular one for this, and we simply just draw out a selection area. I can actually modify this selection by going to Select, Transform Selection, and now I can remodify this selection accordingly, and I'll just click OK for that. Now what I can do with this, if I make any alterations at all, color alterations, only the area within the selection will be altered. The other option is to do a Control and C, which copies the selected area, and then do a Control and V, which now has pasted the selection back on top of itself. So if I use the Move tool here, we can click on this area and we can just move that selection area out. This is quite a useful tool. Another use for the selection tool is to actually create a border around the photograph. So let's maximize this window, and again with the selection tool we'll just draw out a selection within the actual picture area itself. There we've selected just the picture. I want to delete the border area here and change its color, so what we'll do is we go to Select and we'll inverse the selection. Now this means that just the border area has been selected only. Now if we go onto our swatches, the background color on this one is white, so when I delete the selection here, the background color of white will be just left. So press the backspace key and that's deleted the entire parts that within the selection. And now we can do Control D to deselect, and we'll move on to our next tool. And our next tool is the crop tool. Now this is very useful for trimming up the pictures after you've scanned them in. So I can now just draw out a selection or a crop mark, and only the cropped area will remain. So click on the Accept to commit, and there we've tidied up the entire picture. Another use for the crop tool is that we can actually define a crop. So if we define a crop, say a 4 inches by 6 inches at a resolution of say 300 dpi. Now any selection I make will be constrained to a 4 inches by 6 inches selection, so no matter where I place this selection, that picture is always going to be 4 inches by 6 inches. So if I place up there, and we can use the arrow keys just to nudge the selection around a little bit, and we'll accept that. Now that's trimmed that up to exactly 4 inches by 6 inches, and we can confirm that by going to image size, and if we select inches, you see it's 4 inches by 6 inches at 300 dpi. The next important tool is the zoom tool, and we can click on this, and now we can just define an area that we want to zoom into, and there's just enlarge that. If we want to go in further, we can just keep defining different areas, and this makes for easy retouching. Any retouching that you do should always be done at 100%. This means that you're going to get 100% pixels displayed on your screen. If you're working at a lower resolution of say 66%, then the screen is actually going to be throwing away some of the pixels in order to display the entire image, which also means some of the dust spots may not be visible. So my advice is to always work at 100%, and a quick way to work at 100% is to just double click on the zoom tool. An easy way to move around the image now is to select the hand tool and just click and drag on the image to position it to where you want it to be. But there is actually a better way of doing this. So with any tool selected, so we've got the rubber stamp tool selected here, if you just hold down the space bar, that automatically changes whatever tool you're using into the hand or move tool, and now we can just move around, and when I release the space bar, it's back to the clone tool. So that's a very convenient and quick way to work with your pictures. If you double click on the hand tool, it will revert back to fit the image to the screen size. Undoubtedly, one of the most useful tools in any image editing application is the clone tool, or sometimes known as the rubber stamp tool. Click on this, and this works in a very similar way to copy and paste. The only difference is that this will copy and paste in real time or on the fly. So what we do is we select an area to be our source area and hold down the Alt key. This changes the cursor to a crosshair. Click on that area. Now move the cursor to your destination area and just click and paint. And what it's basically doing is picking up from down there and pasting in new pixels on the top there. So it gives the illusion of actually painting with pixels. And try again, press the Alt key and click once, and now just push back in again. It's a very simple tool to use. Another useful tool we can use is the healing brush, and there's various options here. So if we select the healing brush tool, now this works in a very similar manner to the clone tool, and by clicking on an area as your source area, holding down the Alt key, just make a selection. Now move to your destination and just paint out. And what happens here is that the healing brush is actually using the underlying pixels with the new pixels you've just selected and blending them together to produce a near perfect blend. It may take a couple of times to do this. Another option on this tool is also the spot healing brush. Now this is very useful for just cloning out major spots. Just place your cursor over a spot and click on it, and it's as simple as that. It really works very well most of the time. Just click on it very quickly. Another option you can use is let's make this brush slightly smaller by pressing the square bracket key, and we can just paint over a line here. So use a Wacom tablet just to make life easier, and this black line is just defining the area you want to remove. This brush is also often known as a scratch remover with other image editing applications. When we're editing images, we want to be as efficient as possible, and all the tools on the left hand side can also be accessed very quickly via keyboard shortcuts. So we press the letter S on the keyboard, that automatically selects the clone stamp tool. If we press the letter B, that selects the paintbrush. If we press the letter C, the crop tool, letter H for the hand tool, Z for the zoom tool, etc. All these keyboard shortcuts can be found under the Edit menu, Keyboard Shortcuts, and look under Tools, and here you'll see all the keyboard shortcuts that are assigned to each tool, and you can change any of these.